Call an ambulance, quick, hurry. My husband, Caleb, who always made me angry, suddenly collapsed on the floor, sweating heavily. The paramedics came right away. They checked Caleb quickly and put him on a stretcher. Then they turned to me and asked, "You're his wife, right? Can you come with us to the hospital?" Caleb looked at me with desperate eyes as they carried him away. I stared back at him. "No, I won't," I said, without hesitation. "What?" Caleb's voice sounded like he couldn't believe it. "Are you leaving me here?" "So?" I replied. "I'm not coming." "What do you mean?" "Just take care of the rest," I said, turning away. "Wait, Lydia, wait," Caleb called out. I pulled something from my pocket that I'd been carrying for days. The moment Caleb saw it, his face went even whiter. "How dare you treat me like a servant all these years? This is my revenge. I will never forgive you." Let me explain a bit about myself. My name is Lydia. I'm 36 years old and a housewife. I live in a rented apartment with my husband, Caleb. I met Caleb through a coworker when I used to work full-time. My coworker liked to invite me to parties, but I'm more of an introvert who prefers watching movies or cooking alone. I didn't like big groups and often turned down the invites. One time, my coworker invited me to a barbecue. I said no at first, but he insisted, so I went. The party had a lot of people, and one of them was Caleb, who later became my husband. I was sitting by myself, having a drink, when my coworker brought Caleb over. He thought Caleb and I might get along because we had similar interests. At first, I was surprised, but Caleb was friendly and funny. He was tan and seemed like the outdoorsy type. As we talked, I found we had more in common than I thought. We started talking more, and it clicked right away. We exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet again. We went on dates and hung out a lot. Eventually, Caleb proposed, and we got married. Before we got married, Caleb was always kind to me, even though he was more outgoing and liked to be outside. After marriage, things didn't change much at first, but over the years, some things started to bother me. I quit my job to become a housewife because Caleb wanted me to, but he often made sarcastic comments about it. For example, one time when I wasn't feeling well and dinner was late. "I'm home, Lydia. Why isn't dinner ready?" "Sorry, I was sick and had to rest. Can you take a bath first?" "You're a housewife. You should at least have dinner ready," Caleb said, never showing any concern for my health. It made me feel really sad. Another time, I mentioned a reunion in my hometown. "Caleb, there's a reunion coming up. Can I go once I finish my chores?" "Do whatever you want. Being a stay-at-home wife is great. You know, I envy you, Lydia. You get to spend your husband's money. He's usually nice, carrying my purse and bringing me flowers after work, but sometimes, he's rude." I even suggested getting a part-time job, thinking maybe Caleb wanted me to work, but he insisted I stay at home, so I remained a full-time housewife. One day, I got an unexpected call from one of Caleb's relatives. I picked up the phone, feeling uneasy. The relative was panicking on the other end of the line. "Caleb's mother has collapsed." I froze, shocked by the news. The relative explained that she had gone to visit my mother-in-law earlier and found her lying in the yard. She called an ambulance, which took my mother-in-law to the hospital. I quickly rushed to get ready and ran out of the house. When I arrived at the hospital, they told me that my mother-in-law's condition was still unstable. As we were talking, Caleb arrived, out of breath. We went to the hospital room to see my mother-in-law, who was lying in bed, hooked up to various tubes. It was hard to watch. "Mom," Caleb called, but she didn't respond. Caleb stayed at the hospital all day, and I went home to get some things for our stay. Over time, my mother-in-law started recovering and was able to sit up on her own, but she still needed help with most things. "I'm glad she can sit up now. I hope she'll be able to walk again with physical therapy," I said to Caleb. When my mother-in-law's discharge date was approaching, I told Caleb, we should start preparing for her to come home. Then, Caleb said something that confused me. "Oh, by the way, we're leaving this house next week. You better start packing." I was confused. Caleb seemed frustrated with me, like he didn't like my reaction. "We don't need this house. We're moving in with my mom." "Wait, does that mean we're going to live with my mother-in-law after she leaves the hospital?" I never heard anything about that. "What? Did you decide to move in without talking to me? Have you already canceled the lease for this place?" When I said that, Caleb got even more irritated. "Of course, I canceled the lease. It's the right thing for us as a family, to live together and help my mom. Don't tell me you don't want to live with her. I'm the one who works, so I won't take any complaints." He said this and walked away with a firm step. I couldn't believe Caleb was being so strict about this. He had cancelled the lease without even discussing it with me. Now, I had no choice but to move. I knew he was worried about his mom, but this was too much. I sighed deeply. A few days later, I found myself living with my mother-in-law. I had never cared for anyone before, so everything was new to me. I spent most of my days feeding, bathing, and helping her use the bathroom. She didn't want my help and hardly spoke to me. When I tried to talk to her, she would hide in bed and say she was in pain. Before she got sick, my relationship with her wasn't bad. We'd sometimes share snacks from the department store. Maybe she was too weak to care for anyone else. Caleb, on the other hand, rarely came home after work. He would go out for drinks and come back in the morning. If he stayed home, he'd find some excuse to leave, and when he was home, he'd just play video games in his room. One day, I decided to talk to him while he was gaming. "I know you're busy with work and drinking with your colleagues, but can't you help me take care of your mom when you're home, or at least help with the housework?" He didn't even look up from his game. "Why are you being so naive? Housework and caregiving are your job. I'm tired from working all day." "Well, I'm almost out of coffee. Can you make me some? And clean this room, okay? Also, take these clothes to the dry cleaner. I need them by Wednesday." Caleb gave orders and threw his clothes at me. This time, I couldn't hold back and snapped. "That's enough. I've been doing everything, housework and taking care of your mom, for the past month without a break. Why can't you help a little?" Caleb slammed his game controller onto the desk, stood up, and said angrily, "How dare you talk to me like that? Who do you think is providing for you? If you have a problem, then get out, take your stuff and leave." I hesitated, then said, "I feel bad for my mom. She's going to be left all alone with no one to care for her." I couldn't say anything else. It was true that I didn't have much money saved, and I couldn't leave my mother-in-law, who couldn't do anything for herself. I held back my feelings, picked up his clothes, and left the room. After 6 months of this difficult life, my mother-in-law passed away suddenly. One morning, I went to check on her as usual, but she wasn't breathing. I called an ambulance, but it was too late. Caleb was crying, saying, "I don't know why." But I couldn't cry. I felt cold seeing Caleb cry so easily. I thought, "You didn't do anything to help her." And when I realized I didn't have to care for her anymore, I felt a strange sense of relief. I felt guilty for feeling that way. Time passed quickly. After the wake and funeral, I suddenly realized 2 weeks had passed since my mother-in-law's death. It was time to sort through her things. After Caleb left for work, I started cleaning her room. I packed her favorite clothes and accessories into boxes. It didn't take long since there wasn't much. Then, I opened a cabinet next to her bed. There wasn't much inside, but on the bottom shelf was a large can. I remembered it. It was a can of assorted sweets I had given her when she was still healthy. I wondered why the can was there. I opened it, and inside, I found a letter. It was addressed to me, starting with "Dear Lydia." I quickly opened the envelope and found a message written in trembling handwriting. "Lydia, I'm sorry for making you take care of me. I was ashamed of forcing you to work for me every day. I was also ashamed of my son, Caleb. I know how badly he treated you. Lydia, you should leave him and live your life the way you want." My mother-in-law knew everything. She knew how selfish her son was and how it was hurting me. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I'm glad I could spend the last days of my life with you, Lydia. Thank you." That was when I cried for the first time since she passed away. It felt like everything I had been holding in finally came out. I cried until I had no more tears left, and then I made up my mind. I was going to divorce my husband. 10 days later, after finding the letter, my husband was still treating me like a servant. "Lydia, I'm missing a sock. Where is it? And take my car to the car wash today. You've got nothing else to do, right?" He was going golfing with his colleagues today. I couldn't believe it. Today was our wedding anniversary, and he had completely forgotten. "I don't even care about it anymore. What will you do while I'm golfing? You can't just sit around. You have to make dinner, clean my room, and clean the bathroom. You have a lot to do." His arrogance left me speechless. "Hey, you hear me? Bring me my sock and a jacket. Hurry up or I'll be late." At that moment, Caleb suddenly collapsed on the floor, clutching his stomach. He was sweating in pain. He told me to call an ambulance, sounding like he was trying to make it as dramatic as possible. I froze. shocked by what was happening, and he yelled, "Hurry up, you're useless, call an ambulance." When Caleb yelled at me, I felt strangely calm. I called 911, and within minutes, an ambulance arrived with paramedics. The paramedics quickly checked Caleb's condition and placed him on a stretcher. As they moved him, one of them asked, "You're his wife, right? Will you come with us to the hospital?" Caleb looked at me with pleading eyes, but I looked right back at him and said firmly, "No, I will not." "What?" Caleb sounded shocked, as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. "This man is a stranger. I'm not coming, please take care of the rest." Then, I pulled out something from my pocket, the divorce papers I had been carrying for days. They were the ones I had been forced to sign after a fight with Caleb. He had always threatened me with them if I didn't obey him. Caleb tried to grab the papers, but the pain was too much for him to move. He just had to lie back on the stretcher. "Excuse me, but please leave now." I said this, and the paramedics finally took Caleb away in the ambulance. He must have looked like the pitiful husband whose wife had divorced him. He deserved to feel embarrassed. I watched the ambulance drive off and then left the house. It took some time, but the divorce papers were accepted, and everything was finalized. While Caleb was in the hospital for a week, I packed up my things and sent them to my parents' house. Then one day, I ran into Caleb at the grocery store. "Lydia, please don't do this. You love me, don't you? Please don't leave me. I know I've made mistakes. I got carried away because you always listened to me." The arrogance he used to have was gone, and he looked completely pathetic. "What are you talking about? The divorce is already final. It's too late for you to act like this. Live your life however you want." He couldn't believe that I was actually going through with the divorce. He looked shocked, his hands shaking, and his face turning pale. Well, that's that then, bye. It had been 6 months since Caleb and I got divorced. One day, he showed up at my parents' house. He kept ringing the intercom and calling my name so loudly that I had no choice but to answer. He still wanted me to get back together with him. When I didn't respond, he started telling me about his life now. He couldn't cook because he had always made me do all the housework. Now, he only eats TV dinners or eats out. He had gained 10 pounds since the divorce, with extra fat around his face and stomach. He also didn't know how to do laundry. His shirts were always wrinkled and smelled bad, making him look dirty. "I finally realize how great you were, Lydia. If I don't do something, people at work won't like me," Caleb said, starting to cry with fake tears. Basically, he wanted me to go back to being his servant. "I will never go back to that. Never. If you keep making noise, I'll call the police," I told him coldly. When he realized I meant it, he got scared and left, crying. I was sure he wouldn't bother me again. I hoped so. Caleb seemed to be living a very inconvenient life. Meanwhile, I was living comfortably. I had stayed at my parents' house for a while, but now I had my own small apartment and lived alone. My living standards were lower than when I lived with Caleb, but I liked my life this way. I had time for myself. I thought it would be hard to find a job at my age, but a friend of mine knew someone who had retired, and I was able to take her place. I was so happy being able to spend my time and money on myself, without anyone telling me what to do. From now on, I want to live at my own pace. This is the start of a new chapter in my life.